Good morning, students. Hope all of you are fine. Beta, today we will revise chapter 6, and name of this chapter is the three orders. In this chapter, we shall learn about the socio-economic and political changes which occurred in Western Europe. And after the fall of the Roman Empire, many groups of Germanic people from Eastern and Central Europe, they occupied regions of Italy, Spain, and France. So, as there was absence of any unifying political force, military conflict was frequent, and there was the need to gather resources to protect one's land. So that need became very important. So social organization therefore centered on the control of the land. So this way feudalism, this term came into existence. So like our first topic is an introduction to feudalism. This term feudalism has been used by historians to describe the economic, legal, political, and social relationship that existed in Europe in the medieval era. This word feudalism, this is derived from the German word feud, which means a piece of land. So it refers to the kind of society that developed in medieval France and later in England and in southern Italy. And if we talk about in economic sense, feudalism refers to a kind of agricultural production which is based on the relationship between lords and the peasants. And the later cultivated their own land as well as that of the lord. And these peasants they performed labor services for the lords, who in exchange provide them military protection. So even these lords they also had extensive judicial control over peasants. Thus feudalism it went beyond the economic to cover the social and political aspect of life as well. Roots of this has been traced that existed in the Roman Empire and even during the age of the French king also, feudalism as an established way of life in large parts of Europe. So, in Western Europe, basically society was divided in three orders. So, this topic is now the three orders that you must have read in class 9 also during French Revolution. The same order is there. The three orders are mentioned here. The French priests they believe in the concept that people were members of one of the three orders, depending on their work. A bishop stated here below some pray, other fight, and still other works. It means people they were divided in three parts. Those were some who pray, others who fight, and the third category was the working people. So, thus the three orders of society they were broadly the clergy, the nobility, and the peasantry. But these clergy people they were the church people who belonged to the church, then the nobility who just protect that territory, and peasantry who work in the farms. So this way there were the three orders. So here now the another topic that we are doing is the second order, the nobility. Priests they place themselves in the first order and nobles in the second. The nobility they had in reality a central role in social processes. Like this is because they controlled land, and this control was the outcome of a practice that is known as the vassalage. But a vassalage is the word when somebody just works under another person. So that is known as the vassalage. And the kings of France they were linked to the people by this vassalage, and similar to the practice among the Germanic people to whom the Franks were one. The big landowners, the nobles, they were vassals of the king, and peasants were vassals of the landowners. It means there was a social hierarchy. That these nobility, they were the subordinates of the king, they were working under the king, and the peasant, they were working under the landowners. And even a nobleman accepted the king as his senior, and they made a mutual promise who would protect the vassal who would be loyal to him. So this relationship particularly it elaborate rituals and exchange of vows taken on the Bible in a church. It means this ceremony was held in the church, and At this ceremony, the vessel received a written charter or a staff or even a clod of earth as a symbol of the land that was being given to him by his master. So this way they were following some rituals. And these nobles, they enjoyed a privileged status, and he had absolute control over his property in perpetuity. It means for the lifetime. He could raise troops called feudal levies. The lord held his own court of justice and could even coin his own money. It means these nobles, they were like the ruler of their own territory. And he was the lord of all the people settled on his land. He owned vast tracts of land which contained his own dwellings, private field, pasture, and the homes, and the fields of his tenants and peasants, and his house was called a manor. His private lands were cultivated by peasants and who were also expected to act as foot soldiers in the battle when required. Means these peasants, they are to render their services as a soldiers also at the time of any need. Now the next topic that is related to the manorial estate. In this particular topic we will read about the features of these manor. A lord had his own manor house. He also controlled the villages. Some lords control hundreds of villages where peasants live. And even almost everything that was needed for daily life was found on the estate, like grain, blacksmith, carpenter. So all these work within this manor only. Women, they spun and wove fabric, and children work in the lord's wine presses. So the estate had extensive woodlands, forests where the lords hunted, and they contained pastures where his cattle and his horse grazed. This way, in one way, this manorial state, it was self-sufficient. But still, the manor could not be completely self-sufficient because salt, millstone, and metalware had to be obtained from outside sources. Means whatever things which were not locally produced. So this was the brief description of the manorial estate. Now the next is about the knights. From the 9th century, there were frequent localized wars in Europe. The amateur peasant soldiers, like we have read that these peasants, they are to work, they are to render services as the soldiers also, but these peasant soldiers, they were not sufficient, and good cavalry was needed at the time of war. So this led to the growing importance of a new section of people, and they were known as the knights. These knights, they were linked to the lords just as the later were linked to the king. The lord gave the knight a piece of land, and that piece of land, it was known as fief, and promised to protect it. The fief could be inherited. It extended to anything between 1000 and 2000 acres or more, including a house for the knight and his family, a church, and other establishment to house his dependents, besides a watermill and a wine press. So this way, this type of property, it was given to the knights. As in the feudal manner, the land of the fief was cultivated by peasants, and in exchange the knight paid his lord a regular fee, promised to fight for him in war. To keep up their skill, knights spent more time in fencing and practicing tactics with dummies. So almost they were very much loyal to their own lord. And in France, minstrels traveled from manor to manor singing songs which told stories. And even this was the minstrels gallery from where singers entertained nobles while they feasted. So this way, in the second order, there were the manorial estate and the knights. Right. Now the next topic that we are discussing, that is the first order, the clergy, the church people. The Catholic Church had its own laws, own lands given to it by rulers, and could levy taxes. It was thus a very powerful institution which did not depend on the king. At the head of the Western Church was the Pope. He lived in Rome. The Christians in Europe were guided by bishops and clerics who constituted the first order. Most villages had their own church where people assembled every Sunday to listen to the sermon by the priest and to pray together. But everyone could not become a priest. Serfs were banned, as were the physically challenged. Women could not become priests. Men who became priests could not marry. Bishops were the religious nobility. Like lords who own vast landed estate, the bishop also had the use of vast estates, and they lived in grand palaces. It means these first order people, they also have a lot of privileges. And the church was entitled to a tenth share of whatever the peasant produced over the course of the year, and that tax was known as tithe. And money also came in the form of endowment made by the rich for their own welfare and the welfare of their deceased relatives in the afterlife. So this way these church people, they were enjoying the lot of privileges, and even some of the important ceremonies conducted by the church copied formal customs of the feudal elite. The act of kneeling while praying with hands clasped and headboard was an exact replica of the way in which a knight conducted himself while taking vows to the loyalty of his lord. And the same thing now these church people, they were also following. And the use of the term lord for god was another example of feudal culture that found its way into the practices of the church. This way, this world of feudalism, it shared many customs and symbols. Now the next topic, that is about the monks. Apart from the church, devout Christians, they had another kind of organization. Some deeply religious people choose to live isolated lives, in contrast to those clergy who lived amongst people in towns and villages. They lived in religious communities called abbeys or monasteries. Beta, these abbeys, these were the monasteries where this monk used to live. This word abbey is derived from the Syriac abba, means father, and an abbey was governed by an abbot or an abbess, means that they also had a head to govern, to administer all these monasteries. So they lived in religious communities called abbeys or monasteries, and often in places very far from human habitation, because they just want to live their life, an isolated life. That is why these places were very far away. Two of the more well-known monasteries were those established by Saint Benedict in Italy and Cluny of Burgundy. And monks, they took vows to remain in the abbey for the rest of their lives and to spend their time in prayer, study and manual labor like farming. Unlike priesthood, this life was open to both men and women. Men became monks and women, they became nuns. Except in a few cases, all abbeys were single sex communities. That is, there were separate abbeys for men and women. Like priests, monks and nuns, they didn't marry. And from small communities like of 10 or 20 men or women, monasteries grew to communities, often of several hundred with large buildings and landed estate with attached school or colleges and hospitals. Means this way these monasteries, they were also becoming very large sized. And even now they contributed to the development of the arts. And there was the practice of community singing of prayers in church. From the 13th century, some groups of monks called friars choose not to be based in a monastery but to move from place to place, preaching to the people and living on charity. So these monks, they were known as friars. By the 14th century, there was a growing uncertainty about the value and purpose of monasticism, and the Langland's poem contrasted the ease and luxury of the life of some monks with the pure faith of simple ploughmen and shepherds and poor common labourers. And in England, he wrote which had comic portraits of a nun, a monk, and a friar. Now the next topic, that which type of relation the church people had with the other society. Like through Europeans became Christian, They still held on to some of their old beliefs in magic and folk traditions. Christmas and Easter, they became important dates from the 4th century. Christ's birth, celebrated on 25 December, replaced an old pre-Roman festival, the date of which was calculated by the solar calendar. Easter marked the crucifixion of Christ and his rising from the dead, but its date was not a fixed one because it replaced an older festival to celebrate the coming of spring after a long winter, dated by the lunar calendar. It means the date of Christmas it was fixed on 25 December, but date of Easter it was fixed by the lunar calendar. Traditionally, on that day, people of each village used to make a tour of their village lands. With the coming of Christianity, they continue to do this, but they called the village the parish. Parish means the area under the supervision of one priest. So, overworked peasants welcomed holy days. Beta holy days, so that the term we use today, actually that is made up of two words at that time. Holy days means sacred days, because they were not expected to work then. These days were meant for prayer only, but people usually spent a good part of them having fun and feasting. Pilgrimage was an important part of a Christian's life, and many people went on long journeys to shrines of martyrs or to big churches. So, this way, there was a close relation between the church and the society. So, hope all of you have understood the topic. Thank you and have a nice day.